أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praise is to Allah. We seek His aid and His assistance and ask His forgiveness. And we seek refuge in Allah from the evil of our own souls and from the evil of our actions. Whomever Allah guides, no one will be able to mislead him. And whomever He leads astray, nobody can guide him. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, alone without partner, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his slave and messenger. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. O my Lord, open my chest and ease my task for me. Remove the impediment from my speech so that they may understand what I say. So it's lovely to be here with you, my sisters, on this beautiful day of Jummah, 10th of July. And if you haven't already guessed, the theme of the last few episodes of Tea and Me Time have been managing the emotions of anger. And the coaches that have been on have sort of talked about their journey, their experience of anger. And so that's what I'm here to share with you, my experience and what I've come to learn about the emotion of anger and how my relationship with this emotion now is. So I know that when Sister Farah was on, she described her the emotion of anger as her default state. And what I would say is that anger for me wasn't my default state. I saw anger as who I was, meaning that was who I was as a person. I was just an angry person. And that was me through and through. And what was really strange is people didn't see that. And yet my closest and my nearest and my dearest knew that side of me. And I thought it was like part and parcel of who I was. I thought it was something in my genes. I thought I'd inherited it. I thought that, you know, because I had seen this approach many, many times, that it was just part of who I was and there was no escaping it. And that got me really bitter about not only the emotion of anger, but it got me really bitter about myself. And when I sort of entered into my marriage, I thought, right, this is a fresh new start. This is a new me. I'm just gonna bury it away. And truth is that you can't bury these things. And it reared its head again. And so what I was finding was that this trait of mine that I thought was in my blood, that I thought was part of my genes, was showing up in the things that I loved the most. And so having a lifetime of wanting a family, I found myself being really destructive with my family. And having dreamed about being this wonderful mum and being this, you know, having this really great relationship with my children, I found that I was really not the mum I had dreamt I would be. And it was this emotion of anger that I was really struggling with. And if anybody was to ask me, you know, what was it that you didn't like about your parenting? It was my anger. And it showed up in shouting or yelling or just riding with this feeling of anger. And I struggled so much. And I just knew it wasn't the parent I wanted to be. And not only the parent, it wasn't the person I wanted to be. And so for a long time, I oscillated between these two states. And these are the states that we often go through. We're either blaming or we're shaming. So during the day, I'd be blaming my circumstance on why I was angry. So I would blame my children. It's because they don't listen. It's because they're not paying attention. It's because they're acting up. Or it's because my partner isn't helping. Or it's because of X, Y, or Z. Or it's because I was born like this. It's because I inherited this trait. And there are other times when I was in a really shaming mode. So I would, and that was usually happening at night. So I'd have my explosions, I'd have my outbursts, and then I'd be shaming myself. How could I do that? Why would I do that? What's wrong with me? I'm just not cut out to be a parent that I dreamt of. I'm not cut out for it. And so I went and I oscillated between these two states of being, the blaming and the shaming. And it was a really painful way to be. And I knew that I needed to do something. And the more I read about the deen, the more I knew that we had to not get angry. But I couldn't figure out how to do that. And so I'd be on Pinterest, like how to manage my kids, how to have a better relationship with my spouse, how to control anger. I'd be on Pinterest, I'd be Googling it, I'd be, I'd even took up learning NLP because I thought there was something in my wiring that was wrong and had to be fixed. So I even thought, right, let me reprogram my brain and maybe that would help me. And so I was desperate to try and fix myself and fix this problem. And on this journey, I knew that, the Prophet ﷺ said, don't get angry. And what I also came to realize was that there was more to it than don't get angry. And I want to share with you some things that I came to know about and came to learn and came to really reflect that started giving me hope in this trait of mine. And really in my hoping, in my sharing, I hope that it instills some hope in all of you. So I was listening to this beautiful clip on YouTube, and I'm sure I've played it in previous SSS sessions. And it talked about the people of Jannah. And unfortunately, I can't play it today because what happens is if it plays on YouTube, then it can infringe on copyright. So I won't play it today. But I'll tell you what really struck me. And it was this ayah in Surah Ali Imran. And it said, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, about the people of Jannah. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. And this ayah was really beautiful because this clip was telling us about the people of Jannah. And the people of Jannah are who spend in the cause of Allah during times of ease and times of hardship, and who restrain their anger, and who forgive and pardon people. And Allah loves the doers of good. And so suddenly it struck me that, oh my goodness, maybe I could be someone that Allah loved. Because whilst I was blaming and shaming myself, my belief had become that I can never be good enough for Allah to love me, and I can never be good enough to be entered into Jannah with this trait of anger. And suddenly this ayah opened up a whole new possibility for me. That if I could restrain my anger, then I could be a person of Jannah. And I could be beloved to Allah. And you may be familiar with this hadith that said from Al-Albani that Abu Darda reported, I said, O Messenger of Allah, tell me about a deed that will admit me into paradise. And the Messenger of Allah, peace and blessings be upon him, said, do not be angry and you will enter paradise. And this is related as Sahih. And so although I had heard the hadith that, when a Sahaba came to the Prophet and asked, what can I do? And he said, don't get angry. And he said, well, what can I do? And he said, don't get angry. And he said, what can I do? Don't get angry. I knew of that hadith, but when I heard this hadith, do not be angry and you will enter paradise, it was amazing. And then, my sisters, what gave me such hope and inspiration was that I found out and I learned about the gates of Jannah. The gates of Jannah. And one of the gates of Jannah again struck me because I didn't know that this gate of Jannah, this door of Jannah existed. Anybody know of what door of Jannah I'm talking about? Pop it in the chat box. Anybody know? Because I certainly didn't know. No, chat box is empty. Well, I learned about this door. Gate of patience. No, it wasn't that door. I knew of that door, and I knew that I was failing miserably at getting through that door. It was this door that I learned about. A gate called Al-Kazimin Al-Ghayz Wal-Afina Anin Nas. That this door is reserved for those who control their anger. And I was like, oh my goodness, maybe I can get through this door if I can just learn and understand how to control my anger. And just sharing this with you, my sisters, it gives me goosebumps. It really does. And it puts a smile on my face because I had lived a life being so miserable at myself. And although sometimes I spent blaming my children, blaming my spouse, blaming my, marital state and my marital situation and my shared home, or blaming, I don't know, my family, my upbringing, my genes, suddenly I had so much hope that I could walk through this gate. And it puts a smile on my face. And at that moment, I realized that if I want to walk through this door, then I have to do something about it. And rather than blaming and shaming, or blaming or shaming, which I had spent my life doing, and it had got me nowhere, I had to take ownership. I had to take ownership. I had to own up to me. If I was going to get through that door, if I was going to get to Jannah, if I was going to be someone that Allah loved, then I had to take ownership of myself. Because I knew that on the day of judgment, I couldn't blame anybody. I couldn't even blame shaitan, because we know that shaitan, all he can do is give us waswas. That's all he can do. And so he's just going to be laughing at me. And I can't blame anyone else. I'll have to answer for my deeds. And I had to take that ownership, because at the end of the day, my sisters, all I have is to show my deeds. And that's what I will be shown. That's what I will have to explain to Allah. That why did I shout? And why did I scream? And why did I yell? And why did I have this pent-up frustration? I would have to explain what was in my book of deeds when I had it revealed to me. And so I couldn't rely on my kids sorting themselves out. I couldn't rely on my husband, helping me or fixing me, or, my situation, my home changing, me moving from one home to another, me not being around certain people. I couldn't rely on that, because it wasn't a reliable source. Because then I was dependent on something else and someone else. And I knew if I wanted to get to Jannah, I couldn't rely on anyone apart from myself. Yes, we rely on Allah's mercy, and ultimately that's how we will be entered into Jannah, by Allah's mercy. But I had to tie my camel. And so I had to really look within and start understanding what this emotion was about. And in order to control something, what do you think the best way to control something is? What do you think the best way, my sisters, to control something is? Any ideas, any suggestion? How can I control my anger? Or how can I control anything? Do we have Ask Allah, hand it to Allah, look at the consequences. Yep, make dua. Absolutely. Take a long breath. Yep. Change the way you think. Ask Allah, make dua. Get to know it. Yes. And so these are all amazing responses, and absolutely right. But they're part of the picture. And so, yes, I would ask Allah, Allah, remove it for me. I'd always be asking Allah, Allah, take it away from me. But it's a bit like, me diagnosing my patient with a problem of, let's say, I don't know, a heart problem, a condition. And that patient is just asking Allah, Allah, remove this heart condition or this lung condition or this skin condition from me, right? And yet they're having burgers, they're having chocolates, they're having all the wrong things, right? And yes, I have to seek refuge from shaitan, because we all know that anger is, part of what shaitan incites, that shaitan wants us to get angry. So he will give us waswas. Absolutely. So I would seek refuge. And I knew that, one of the advice was, right, if you're angry, sit down. If you're sitting down, and if you're stood up, sit down. If you're sitting down, lie down. If you're angry, go and make wudu, right? But in that moment, I couldn't even, if I was standing, I couldn't even bring myself to remember that, let alone to enact it, right? And so what I really had to do was I really had to understand where my anger was coming from. I had to understand where it was coming from. And so, like with any condition, the most empowering thing that my patients can do is to understand their heart and why they might have developed a heart condition, their lungs and why they might have developed a lung condition, their skin and why they might have developed a lung condition. When I can understand the condition, I am more empowered to take action. So I had to get underneath all of that. Now, my anger and my frustration was my yelling, my shouting. So that was like the volcano erupting, right? But actually, before the volcano erupts, what happens before the volcano erupts, my sisters? Any suggestions? Any suggestions? A build-up. Yep, a build-up. Absolutely, a build-up. And so in that build-up, what do you feel? What do you feel in that build-up? You can see smoke. Yep, yep. Yeah. So in the build-up, before I had started yelling, before I had started shouting, I would feel, and some people describe it as my blood boiling, right? Yes, Farina, you have a feeling inside yourself that you're going to lose it. That's right. You can feel that sense of frustration. And that feeling might feel like you feel a bit hotter, or you feel like there's a heaviness on your chest, or you can feel that your teeth are gritting. Like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to shout. I'm not going to shout. And you're talking like, can you stop it, please? Like you're talking through gritted teeth, right? So before the explosion happens, there are already things that are already building up that you can start feeling. Yes, Zahra, the symptoms, absolutely. So for my patients, I tell them that the heart attack is the, is the end result, but there's symptoms to everything, right? And so I started having to be aware of my symptoms. So I could feel that my patience was wearing shorter and shorter and shorter. I could sense it. And everybody has that sense that they're going to lose it, right? So that's one thing. So before the action, before the behavior, there was a feeling. Now, this is when my understanding really got deep. That with every feeling, there is a story behind it. There is a thinking behind it. So the behavior that I wasn't liking was shouting, yelling, screaming, but the feeling, the symptoms was maybe my blood boiling, me feeling hot, my symptoms of, my heart rate I could start feeling my heart rate, I might start getting clammy. But what I learned was that before any of that begins, I'm having thinking. And it all starts with the thinking. And this is when, sisters, we really have to slow down. And this is when the understanding really can come and help enormously. When we can slow ourselves down, and this might not be in the heat of the moment. In the heat of the moment, you're not going to be able to figure this out. But rather than having those moments where I was shaming myself, I was now taking ownership and reflecting on what my thinking was, really slowing down. So if you imagine, maybe the event has happened, and hindsight is a really beautiful thing. Hindsight can really help us. It's not there to beat us with. It can really help us. And so I could really slow down and think, okay, so rewind, slow down. What was it? And so there'd be certain situations where I'd be like, oh, why did I lose it when, let's say, for example, I don't know, let me use a real life example. When my son started to become really disrespectful, right? My son said something to me, really disrespectful. And then I felt really angry and I shouted at him. What happened? What was I thinking? Well, I don't like disrespectful behavior, right? That makes sense. So of course I would get angry. But I had to keep reflecting. Okay, so what is it that you don't like about that disrespectful behavior? Well, I didn't like the fact that why would he do it to me? How could he do it to me? Why would he do it to me? Does he not know that I'm his mother and he shouldn't treat me like this? So that was one of my reflections. So then I realized that, oh, okay. So then it's about me. It's the fact that I've been disrespected. So it was no longer about the disrespectful behavior or the disrespectful speech that he was saying. It was the fact that he had insulted me. And didn't he know that I wasn't to be spoken like that? And so we've talked a bit about in previous sessions that a lot of the time when we become reactive, it's because we have the me, myself, and I lens on. So for example, okay, another time when I lost my rag, when the kids, I don't know, broke something, let's say for example. Okay, so they broke something. And I felt really enraged at the moment. And then I shouted, okay, let's rewind. Let's slow down. What was it that was bothering you? Well, they broke something. Okay, so what does that mean? They broke something. Maybe it was an accident. No, but they broke something. Now I'm going to have to tidy it up. I'm going to have to sort out the mess. I'm going to have to clear it out. Oh, and guess what? I already told them not to play like that because they're going to break something. And so, again, when I started reflecting, I started to see a pattern. That it was like, oh, I told them not to do this. They didn't listen to me. And now I have to tidy this mess up. So again, in that example, can you see that I recognized that when I saw the problem, all I was seeing was me, myself, and I. I'll give you another example. I'll use the same example, the disrespectful example. So when my son maybe used bad language, right? Okay, so how could he use bad language? It's bad. Okay, what's bad about it? Well, it's not a sign of being a good Muslim. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if he's not going to be a good Muslim, then, what does that mean for him? Okay, if he uses language at this age, then he's going to learn, he's going to make it a habit, and then he's going to use it when he's older. And if he's older and he's learning it, then he's going to be accountable. And if he's using this foul language, then he's going to be sinful for it. And, and if he can do this bad action, maybe he'll do another bad action. Where was I in this moment, my sisters? Where was my thinking at this moment? Yes. So I didn't see that my son was using this bad language now. I had seen that he was going to use this bad language for the rest of his life. He was going to be falling into sin for it. He was going to grow up to be a really bad Muslim. And that really upset me. Obviously, I was really upset, but it angered me. And the only way that I could feel back in control was that I would shout at him and say, stop using that language. But I was getting carried away. Exactly, Rosina. I was getting carried away. Yes, it was a hypothetical situation that I just had imagined there on the spot. I'll give you another example. So let's stick to the same example, because there's so many ways when we reflect, we can see things. It's the same situation, but when I slow down, when I rewind, I can see how that pressure is building up and why that volcano is erupting. So, okay. So now one of my other children starts hitting their sibling, right? Starts hitting their sibling. And I get super mad, right? I get super mad. And, I shout at them. I put them in timeout. You can't hit. You mustn't hit. How could you do that? And I start yelling at them. And again, I really didn't like this. But they're hitting. They need to be taught a lesson. I can't have them hitting, right? And when I really slowed down and I was in my shaming mode, I'd be like, oh, you know what? I know where they learned hitting from. I know where they learned getting angry from. Where do you think that they had learnt it from, or where I thought that they had learnt it from? Yeah. Oh God, they've learnt it from me. Of course they're going to hit each other. Of course they're going to scream at each other. Of course they're going to become aggressive, because that's all they see from me. That's what they're learning. You know, oh, all those times that I did that, that was me. I taught them that. And in that thinking, where was I in that thinking? Where was I in that thinking? Yep, I was guilt, but I wasn't now projecting into the future. I was now looking at the past. This is because of me, they've been like this. I have taught them this. They have learnt this from me. It's when I did that to them. Yesterday I shouted at them. So I was in the past. So yes, I was in the past. So when in that moment of anger, I wasn't dealing with their behavior. I was dealing with the fact that in my head, all I kept thinking about was, oh my goodness, oh my God, what am I going to do now? This is what I've taught them. How can I reverse all this? What am I going to do? And I was in the past. So what I learned from reflecting was that the behavior was just the outward, what you saw. The eruption was just the outward. But there was a lot of things happening beyond and below the surface. And it was only when, my sisters, I would slow down, I would take ownership. I was ready to explore these uncomfortable truths, that I could really find out where it was coming from. That actually it wasn't coming from my children. It was coming from my projection of the future and projection of the past, my reflection of the past, my overthinking. Or in that moment, I got so caught up with the moment that it was just me, me, me. It was me, myself, and I. What did this mean for me now? And so slowing down enabled me to recognize my thought patterns and my thought processes. And that's when I could really challenge them. I could challenge, well, is my son or my children going to be destined to a life of, I don't know, being off the rails, or, not being a good Muslim? Could I? Is that the truth? No. Could I, is my past fixed, and what I've done to them, is that fixed? Well, no, the past is the past. I can't change that. Yes, that's right. But what do we have? What do we have?
My God.
Oh dear, is muted. What do we have, my sisters? I can't go back in to the past to change what I've done. I can't go into the future to fix things in the future that I don't even know. All I have is now. All I have is the present moment. And so in the present moment, what can I do? And so one of the sisters said, how can I reverse these bad habits? Well, it's not a reversal. We don't need to reverse. Let's get really present. Let's get really present. And so in the moment, there are certain symptoms that we talked about that I could recognize. So I had to become more aware of myself to recognize them. And what do I do with these symptoms? Well, what would you do when you had any symptoms? You need to know how to manage those symptoms. You need to manage those symptoms, yes. And a lot of the advice that I had was, okay, when you notice that you're feeling angry, when you notice that you're feeling frustrated, when you're boiling up, when go and make wudu, go and sit down, right? But what I found the difficulty of that was that I hated these feelings. I hated these feelings. I hated feeling like that. But what I really realized is that I didn't have to hate these feelings. If I was going to get into Jannah, I had to really understand them, and they had to be a means, a springboard into going into Jannah. So I had to use these feelings. I had to use these feelings to take advantage of them. Yes. And so instead of hating them and repressing them and suppressing them, I started looking at them as something gifted to me. And I'd never ever looked at these symptoms as a gift. That these were my ways. This was my internal system, signaling system, to tell me I'm off balance here. And suddenly I started seeing these feelings of and symptoms of anger as my gift. And I realized, you know what? Everybody has been given these feelings. I'm not alone. And just like you said, Ruxanara, this is what makes me human. This is what makes me normal. This is not something that makes me abnormal. This is not something that makes me twisted. This is not something that I have to hate myself for. Allah created us and created things within us. And I had to take ownership of everything that He gave me, including my feelings. And I can own them, and I can use them as a tool for me. So it wasn't about me acquiring more tools and techniques about how to handle it. How can I already use the tool that Allah's given me? This is a tool. Just like you said, Zahra, this is my signal. I've been given an internal signal. And I can use this to make me or break me. I can use this as my stepping stone to Jannah. I can use this to do good with. I can suddenly become a doer of good, and Allah loves the doers of good. And so just like in our cars, we have on the dashboard many signs, right? We don't start seeing that sign and start blaming all the other cars on the road. Hey, why has this sign gone off in my car? Right? That doesn't make sense. The sign's gone off in your car. Why are you shouting at other people? You wouldn't do that. that symptom going off in me was a chance to check me. It was a chance to check me. And the more I started noticing the signal going off, the more I could slow down and I could take those steps to take myself away. I could, if the engine's light goes off in your car, my sisters, you're going to get yourself to the mechanic. You're going to call your mechanic friend up. You're going to call someone. You're going to take it to the garage, right? You're going to do something. And so I realized that these symptoms were there. Yeah, absolutely. Put your hazard warning lights on, right? So then I could start saying, guys, I'm starting to feel really angry now. I'm not sure why, but I just need a moment. And I could start putting that pause button on when I recognized that my lights, my signaling system had flickered on. And because I had viewed now as a gift, that Allah had gifted me with this. What if this was my opportunity to get to Jannah? What if this was my opportunity for Allah to love me? I actually started to like myself. And I didn't have to blame myself, and I didn't have to shame myself. And I felt blessed by Allah that Allah had given me this. I felt blessed. And yeah, Zahra, that's when it really shifted. Because I realized that I had blamed everyone and everything. And I had even blamed Allah for giving this trait to me. And I had been resentful at having that within me. And when I recognized that that was holding me back from turning to Allah, that was holding me back from loving Allah, I realized the true crux of the problem. That I love Allah, and I could say I love Allah, but Allah, why did you do this to me? Allah, why test me with this? And there was always a but in my relationship with Allah. And when I realized that I had blamed everyone and everything, including Allah, that's when I could take full ownership and start seeking forgiveness. And I could seek forgiveness from Allah. I could seek forgiveness from all those around me. And I could start seeking forgiveness for myself. I didn't have to hate myself. And I didn't have to blame myself. And that there was nothing wrong with me. That I was human as much as the next person. And every time I saw anger around me or people being angry, I realized that they were human too. And that really transformed my relationships with people that I had started to dislike because of their anger. That I could see that they were human too. And that they just didn't understand what these signals and symptoms and internal warning lights and what these feelings meant. And so we might not always understand the thinking behind it, my sisters. And that sometimes takes a little bit of reflection. It may sometimes take, talking about it. It may not. But if we can see the feeling as a gift, then we can work on our behavior. And then I suddenly realized that when the hadith said, don't get angry, it meant don't get angry in your actions. Don't get angry in your feelings, but don't get angry in your thinking. Because when you do, you're off center. You're off center. And you're not seeing the truth. And so that don't get angry for me meant that don't get angry because you're not seeing the truth of the matter. You're either not present, you're in the future, you're in the past, or you're seeing me, 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 me. Don't get angry because you're not seeing the truth right now. So, my sisters, I've talked on for so long, subhanAllah, and I'm sorry, I've been babbling so long. But I really wanted this session to instill hope and instill a new way of looking at anger. And in seeing and understanding anger in a new light, we can manage this anger. It was given to us for a reason. And that reason, my sisters, might be the reason that you and I are able to enter into Jannah. SubhanAllah. I pray that that gives you hope. And I know I've taken up all the time for today's session, but I'm happy to take questions. But for what I want to do is I just want to stop the recording now because if you want to come on, that you can come on, you don't need to worry about being recorded. So what I will do is I will end the session now. If anybody would like to talk more about this, you're more than welcome to email sistersseekingsalam@gmail.com. Please feel free to reach out. And I just want to end the recording by saying Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.